Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on InspireSmall.biz. What is the Indy's Trusted Servant Show? Well, first of all, what is Indy's Trusted Servant? That's me, Danny O'Malia. I do customer service training and keynote speaking about customer service and organizational culture. It's all about the culture of the organization is going to determine the level of service. I learned from the hand of the master, my late father, Joe O'Malia, all about all that stuff back in the O'Malia Food Market days, and even before that, at a small grocery store he owned in Broad Ripple when I was 9 and 10 that he actually lost. He came back 10 years later and successfully launched O'Malia Food Markets, and one of the things I learned was never, ever, ever give up. So if you're interested in my customer service training and keynote speaking about culture and service, give me a call at 317-413-9062. What's the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on InspireSmall.biz? I like to describe it as lively local small biz and community talk where you can feel the pulse of Indy. And today, my guest is a fellow Xavier graduate. Okay, way to go, Steve. Go X. And a residential realtor for Keller Williams, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about his networking group, Info Connection 2.
Yes.
And networking in general, which I know is a subject near and dear to Ryan Henry's heart. He's the major domo of InspireSmall.biz, and so I think you guys can learn a lot from each other. So, Steve, welcome to the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on InspireSmall.biz.
Thanks, Danny. Glad to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. Tell the viewers a little about Steve Rupp and his background. I already talked about the Xavier thing, but you're an Indianapolis native, right?
I am. I am.
What'd you go to high school? Chittard High School.
Absolutely.
Xavier University. What'd you major in?
Entrepreneurial studies.
There you go.
Before it was a thing.
Before it was a thing. There you go. That's good. And so, what have you done since you got out of college a few weeks ago?
It's been a lot of weeks ago, but no, when I graduated college, I did something completely contrary to what my major was, and that was get into banking. And the rationale for that quickly was that I was not super strong with numbers, and I wanted to do something that would strengthen my financial acumen and be able to understand how numbers work and how to run a business. So banking did that, and I was able to go through a management training program, taught me all the different parts of the bank and,
cool.
And how it works.
Do you mind saying what bank it was?
It was First of America Bank of Indiana.
Okay, what is that now? Do you know? Hard to say.
PNC Bank.
It's PNC now. And what did you do there?
So was in a management training program for a year. I got out of that and went into business development, where I was a cash management officer.
Okay.
And then I got out of that and I was an assistant manager for the retail banking center down in Beech Grove.
All right. So loaning money to retail or what?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Very
it
good.
Was individual loans and banking.
I know a little about that from the other end.
Yes.
So what did you do from there?
So from banking, I went to work with a friend of mine from Boy Scouts that I knew, and helped him in his small business for a little while as a manufacturer's representative for commercial kitchen equipment and contract furniture.
So sales.
Sales, absolutely. And then after that, I dabbled a little bit in promotional marketing and worked for a company in Noblesville that is no longer around. But when I did, we specialized in promotional products. So think imprintables, pens, shirts,
T-shirts,
that kind of thing,
yes.
Right?
Okay.
And then after that, that's when I got into real estate.
This is good sales background.
All of it was great sales and marketing.
Yeah. And you got into real estate from there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how long have you been with Keller Williams?
I've been with Keller Williams for 9 years. I've been in real estate for over 23.
Good. Great. So we're really here to talk about, even though it's nice to talk about Keller Williams and your background, we're here to talk about networking in general and Info2 Connect specifically. I was invited, I forget how I connected to InfoConnect.2, but I got invited. I've been invited to a couple of different ones. I came to yours. We kind of connected there. Mm-hmm. So tell us about InfoConnect 2, and then we'll talk networking in general.
Okay, great. So the Info Connection 2 is the full official name. We usually just call, as you referenced, Info Connect 2. We've been around since for about 30 years. I've been involved with it for about 25. And we specialize in helping people to not only build their business, but also to mastermind. So there's a lot of different networking groups out there. All of them are fantastic, and they all have a different personality. And ours is just one of those personalities that will fit some people. So what we really specialize in, what makes us different, is that we are a relatively small group in that we have about 20, 25 members.
And you don't really want to get that much bigger,
no,
right?
We're not interested in getting a whole lot bigger. About 30 is our max. Like most networking groups, we are industry exclusive, meaning that we will not have more than one real estate agent or mortgage lender or what have you, in order to foster better cooperation within the group, so there's not some friction between members. So that's not unique to that. But what is unique to our group over some other groups is that we have a very much of a mastermind type mentality. And specifically, I mean that we have an educational component to every single meeting that we have. And it's going to focus around a different theme. Some of those are going to be a typical spotlight where you're learning more about each member's business, or others are going to be specifically focusing on a topic.
Such as customer service.
For example, customer service, which is why we invited you in.
Exactly.
Others will talk about how do you run a business? How do you network properly? How do you do proper advertising or marketing? Or
how do you get a loan?
How do you get a loan? There's financial planning, taxes, all this stuff. Everything is centered around traditionally a small business person that might not be getting this information from another source.
So are you the only Info Connection 2 group in town?
We are now. There were 4 at one point in time around the north side of the city, and now we are the last one left, to my knowledge.
So you mentioned industry specific. Would you like to, and you might have to really think about this, would you like to share what industries you might be looking for to join the group?
Sure, absolutely. So one industry that we would love to have is an estate planning attorney. That would be a great one. A plumber, an electrician, a landscaper, a hardscaper.
A hardscaper?
A hardscaper.
What's a hardscaper?
People who build patios.
Oh, okay. I never heard that term before.
There's a lot. Some landscapers will do both, but there's some that just specialize in hardscaping.
Okay.
So those are some examples of some industries that we're looking for. All your major ones that you would typically expect to see in a networking group: insurance, real estate, mortgage lender, that kind of thing. Those are
banker.
All insurance, banker. Yeah. Those are all taken. But we are always looking for great people to potentially see if we're a good fit. And we always offer a couple of meetings to come as a guest to see if it's a good fit for both of us, the group and the individual. And if it is, why we invite you to join as a member.
So if first of all, when do you meet and where do you meet?
Great question. So we meet the first and third Fridays of every month from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. at the Delaware Township Assessor's Office in Fishers. And that's located at 9090 East 131st Street. It's about 131st and 37.
Yeah, between Allisonville and 37, closer to 37.
Correct.
Yeah. So if somebody out there thinks they might be interested in coming, they can't just walk in the door, or can they?
They can if they want. We usually like a heads up, and
how would they go about doing that?
The best way to do it is to send me an email. And my email is steve@welcome2indy.com. And then we can do a little self-discovery to see if this might be a great fit for what you're looking for, the industry that you represent. And we can let you know if there's any immediate conflicts or not. If there are not, then I'll let you know what the next steps are in order to come. But basically, it's show up at a meeting and participate and see if it's a good fit for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you feel like your group gets, what's the best way to say this? People get to know each other better than they would in a big, huge Chamber of Commerce type setting, right? Not to pick on any other types of places where people get together, but the mastermind group type thinking and all that education that goes into it, you have some speaker every week, right?
Yes,
Pretty
correct.
much. Okay. So if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, get a hold of Steve by, what is it again? Info, what is it again?
You can send me an email at steve@welcome2indy.com.
What other networking do you do as a real estate guy?
So I do a lot of networking with within my own industry,
Okay.
in order to facilitate better relationships with my peers, my colleagues. I do not look at other real estate agents as competitors. We are all colleagues because we have to work together. So I do a lot of that. The other one.
How would a real estate agent from Keller Williams versus a real estate agent from XYZ company work together?
Well, on the very basic level, we have to work together for a transaction where one party is likely bringing a buyer, the other has a seller, and you have to bring them together, negotiate terms that are acceptable to both parties, and get them to a smooth closing, which is what everybody wants. And you have to work together to do that. And you have to look for a win-win philosophy instead of a win-lose, which is how some people look at it from some other industries, or maybe some other real estate agents. But you really have to make sure that you are looking out for everyone's best interest and try to find some similarities, because at the end of the day, everybody just wants to get to closing. The buyer wants the house, the seller wants to sell the house. They want their money to go move on to the next phase.
And both realtors want to sell the house too.
That's how we get
Right.
paid. That's how we put food on the table for our families.
Sounds a little bit like my dad a long time ago told me, here's the deal in the grocery business. Let's take Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola sells Coca-Cola to O'Malley's. O'Malley's sells it to Mrs. Rupp. Mm-hmm. It's a good deal if Coca-Cola makes money, if O'Malley's makes money, and Mrs. Rupp thinks she got a good value out of it. Right?
Absolutely.
If any of that breaks down, ultimately it's not a good deal for anybody. That's kind of what you're describing with other realtors.
Absolutely.
And working together. And that's the kind of thing that you can learn more about in a group like Info Connect, and get more specific to that kind of a situation than maybe you can in a bigger group.
Correct.
Because you get to know each other better. So what do you? We can talk about the real estate business a little bit if you want, unless you want to talk more about Info Connect. Is there more you want to say, or is that pretty much it?
Well, Info Connection 2, as I mentioned, is a unique group, and probably the biggest thing that we want to leave with people is that we want you to feel like you missed something if you're not able to make a meeting. We don't want you to feel like you just missed your opportunity to give a 30-second elevator pitch. We want you to feel like you truly missed some information that you would have found valuable had you have attended that meeting. And that's why we really focus on making sure that people have good attendance at those meetings.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, some organizations they don't even miss you if you don't come. Right? You guys miss the person, and the person missed something.
For sure.
So just back to the issue of Info Connect. If somebody out there thinks they might want to come on the first and third Fridays of the month, what is the minimum number of meetings you'd have to attend? You have to attend 80%, 90%, what?
2/3.
2/3, okay.
2/3 for the year.
Okay, 2/3 for the year. Are you automatically booted, or do you have a kind of a sit down?
There will be a pattern correction conversation that happens, and maybe situations change, and so we want to sit down and learn.
Somebody travels all of a sudden with a new job or whatever.
Maybe it's not a good fit anymore, and that's okay. Things change, so people come and go, and we want to be there when it's a great fit for you, and vice versa. But we also want our members to know that they're missed if they're not able to attend. So that's important.
That's great, and really, that's fairly unique to most networking groups, I think. Even your, your small town chambers of commerce wouldn't come at you if you only showed up for 2/3 of the meetings. In fact, they'd be glad you showed up for 2/3 of the meetings.
They have your money anyway, right?
Well, right. There's that, but there's and been in a number of those organizations, or like a Rotary Club, which I've been a member of Indianapolis Rotary. Now I'm in Carmel. Ryan's in the East Side Rotary Club. They're happy if you show up 2/3 of the time. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good attendance rate, or at least it's livable. But in a smaller group like this, you're really counting on each other even more in a way.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's an absolute necessity because you are contributing something to that group every single time you're there. And if you're not there, that contribution is now gone. And so the group can't benefit from your experience and your input if you're not able to be there. So that's why we want to make sure it's a good fit for everybody, because we value the input that each member has each week that they come.
You know, I forgot to ask you one thing that usually comes in the beginning. Tell us about your family.
So thank you for asking. So my family, I have a wife. Her name is Bridget. We have been married. Next year will be 20 years.
Where'd y'all meet?
We are actually connected through a mutual friend of ours.
Oh, what was it, a blind date?
It was a blind date.
Son of a gun.
It was a blind date.
My
sister's old boyfriend.
Sister's old
Believe
boyfriend.
it or not.
Okay.
Who was dating my wife's best friend at the time.
Oh,
so that's kind of how that all happened. But anyway,
how many
you can
kids?
meet anybody through anywhere. I have 2 kids.
And where they go to school?
So Anastasia is 17. She's a senior at Guerin Catholic. And then Natalia, she's 12, and she is a 7th grader at Westfield Middle School.
Okay, great. Junior in high school?
Senior.
Senior. Where's she going to go to school?
Depends on if she gets accepted. Her number 1 choice is Clemson.
Ooh, that's an out of the ordinary for an Indianapolis kid, right?
It is very hard to get in if you're not from the state. So South Carolina, you have 70% students must come from South Carolina.
Okay,
so
great.
It's very competitive.
Great. So let's go back to the Keller Williams for a minute, or to the real estate business, because that's a hot topic right now.
Absolutely,
right?
It is.
And we were talking a little bit off camera about the interest rates and so on and so forth. What do you see for the market right now, and what do you see for the market in, going into 2023?
That's a great question. So I always like to preface before I answer that question with, no one's crystal ball is completely clear. I don't care how good you are. Some people have a little clearer crystal ball than others, but I listen to a lot of really smart people who are a lot smarter than I am, and then I also use some of my experience as well. But essentially, the answer to your question is this. There's a lot of uncertainty in the market, whether it's real estate, whether it's the stock market, whether it's the economy, there's tons of uncertainty. There's nothing that kills big ticket purchases faster than an uncertainty in an economic climate. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're dealing with right now. And being in the business for 23 years, I've seen several of these shifts that we're in right now. And what happens is the shifts are generally relatively short in the grand scheme of things, and I'll define that as anywhere between 12 to 14 months is the average length of a downturn in a market, or a shift, or a correction, or contraction, whatever you want to call it. And the average expansion is 3 to 5 years. Now, we just came off of a profoundly long economic expansion, the longest in history.
And home sales were going through the roof.
Too fast. So let me use this analogy. This is what I like to describe it as. Our market over the past 3 years, think of it as an airplane. And you're on an airplane, and the pilot has you going in a vertical climb. Well, engines, at some point, when you get to the atmosphere too high, the engines run off of oxygen. And when that oxygen gets too low for that plane, those engines are going to cut off.
And you're in deep trouble.
So what happens is you're going to go into a nosedive, and that plane is going to start coming down very quickly, and it's going to crash unless the pilot can fix it and come out of the nosedive and restart those engines. The engine in this analogy is the housing market. Right? And so what we needed to happen was have the pilot recognize, i.e. the Fed, that our industry, our market, our economic climate was getting too hot too fast. At the height of our expansion, we were at an annualized rate in March of this year at 22.3% appreciation. Highest on record. We can't sustain that. Those engines were getting too far into the atmosphere, and they were going to run out of oxygen fast. So what we needed to have happen was interest rates, because they were artificially low for a long time, we needed the Fed to do something, and they did. Question is, are they doing too much too fast? Time will tell on that, but what we have seen is a lot of predictions by a lot of really smart people that are saying interest rates are going to start coming down starting this month, and they have. And then by the second quarter of next year, they are predicted to be somewhere around the 5% range.
Which is a reasonable.
It's a very reasonable number.
Yeah,
Not 3% like it was, last year or year before last, but that's an artificially low number, and it's not sustainable.
Was the 3% largely because of COVID?
Some of it was, right?
Was some of it because of the supply chain stuff?
That's what you hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
And that is the other part of this equation. The Economics 101, you walk in your first day of econ in college, the first thing you're going to learn about is your supply and demand curves. So real estate is exactly that same thing. So right now, we have less than an anemic supply. It's gotten better. At the worst of it, the lowest supply, we had 2 weeks of inventory. 2 weeks. A balanced market, to put that into perspective, is about 6 months. Okay? We didn't have enough supply for the demand that we had at the time. And think about it, the mortgage rates were so stinking low, people could buy more house than they ever could before. The low mortgage rates are why we had such a long, drawn-out expansion than we did. Because if mortgage rates went up, we would not have had the expansion that we did.
Right.
The government kept it low for a long time in order to deal with COVID. The real estate market didn't see as big of a hit in COVID as they were expecting to see. It only lasted about 6 months total before we were on a significantly higher curve as far as supply demand.
And there was pent-up demand.
Absolutely it was.
Yeah,
Our market didn't stop a whole lot. So what we needed to have happen was interest rates start rising slowly. They rose a little bit faster than what we were hoping and expecting, but the Fed accomplished what they were trying to do, and that is to put the brakes on the economy a little bit. So here, we are expecting to see a very busy spring market.
Well, I hope you do.
I do too. And there's a lot of buyers who are hoping those interest rates come down so that they can afford houses again that they can't afford now because of the higher interest rates.
How important is the, well, how do I ask this question? The cost of living in central Indiana, in the Midwest generally, is cheaper than on the coasts, right?
Correct.
By far,
Yes.
right? How has that impacted all of this? Or has it?
That's a great question. And to be very frank with you, it's exacerbated our problems. Because what we're seeing is a lot of people from the coasts are moving into the Midwest.
Yep.
In fact, if you look at a National Association of Realtors, otherwise known as NAR, report, if you look at the hottest cities in the nation right now, 7 out of 10 of them are in the Midwest.
Nashville, Tennessee is very hot, right?
It is number one.
Yes, sirree. Where's Indianapolis?
We're not in the top 10, but we're in the top 20.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is the number one out-of-state city where buyers are moving from to Indianapolis is Chicago.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that.
We love Chicago right now. There's a lot of Chicagoans. So if you're listening to this and you're from Chicago, thank you. Welcome to Indy.
If you're from Chicago, call Steve Rupp at Keller Williams.
That's right. If you haven't bought something already, happy to help you out. We're very familiar with the market.
There you go. Well, let's go back to the networking thing for just a minute. What else would you mentioned you network with other realtors.
Yes.
Do you do any other networking?
I do. So chambers of commerce for me have always been something that's important to me. So One Zone, which is the Carmel and Fishers chambers.
And Fishers, yep.
I've been involved with them since '99 when I got into the business. They're a fantastic chamber of commerce. And then the other one is Westfield. That's where I live. And I am the incoming chair of the Westfield Chamber.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Westfield is the fastest growing city in the state of Indiana. One of the fastest in the country.
Just say Grand Park. Right? Just say Grand Park.
That is an economic engine. It's accomplished what they wanted to.
You know, I've had kids play a multitude of sports at Grand Park. And if I don't go to Grand Park for a couple of months, I live at 116th and Gray, I'm always amazed what's new there on the way to Grand Park in the way of restaurants mostly, right? Every hot. Who would have thought there'd be a second Portillo's in Hamilton County?
Yes.
Just to name one. Wow, Portillo's is up here now. That means there's a lot of people here.
There's a lot of people up here, and we are growing so fast. It's a great opportunity for the Chamber to help the business community, which is growing and changing daily. And it's a great opportunity for us to represent them and be a voice for businesses, especially new ones that are moving to the area. So we're very happy and honored that we can do that, and we take that very seriously.
I have spoken to the Westfield Chamber at one of their meetings. Oh,
yes, you did.
Were you there?
I was.
You were? Okay, great.
I never miss a gig with you, Danny.
That's right. You have to listen to me over and over and over again. Well, Steve Rupp with Keller Williams Realty, and more importantly, Information Connect 2.
Yes.
Give us that contact information if somebody's interested in your visiting the networking group one more time.
Sure. So if you'd like more information, or if you would like to attend as a guest, please email me at steve@welcome2indy.com.
Thanks for being our guest today.
Danny, it's a pleasure as always.
Take care and
Good
go
to see you
X.
again. Go X.
All right.